What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's latest film, one half of Barbenheimer. We are in the midst of a very impressive phenomenon at the box office between Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm going to talk about the Barbenheimer phenomenon in the second segment. This would really just be focused on Oppenheimer as a film, which I loved, completely loved. I'm going to get into all the reasons why I did. But I'll just say that the Barbenheimer of it all. Oppenheimer opened to over $80 million domestically in the United States. This is a 3-hour R-rated historical biopic film made for adults. And it grossed more than any Christopher Nolan movie that doesn't have Batman in it opening weekend. That is just completely bonkers and just speaks to the very special time we are in terms of what Barbenheimer is. And I'll get into that more in a second. Separate segment. Check the link below for that. So Oppenheimer, Christopher Nolan's latest film, first since Tenet, which of course released back in 2020, kind of reopening cinemas during the pandemic. Now we have Oppenheimer, the second Nolan film based around current events after, of course, Dunkirk. He returns to World War II era with the story of J. Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the modern atomic bomb, and really making a film through the eyes and persona of Oppenheimer, a film about the Manhattan Project, the secret development of nuclear bombs and the technology behind all of that, in the lead up to the dropping of the bombs on Japan in 1945. And I think this is a really impressive film for a number of reasons. One, I think it has great subject matter, right? The Manhattan Project is an absolutely captivating time in history. This kind of race against the clock to really achieve scientific breakthrough, right? In the development of nuclear fission and fusion and finding out how to make the bomb before the Nazis do, right? And also trying to keep their technological developments and secrets away from their own ally, the Soviet Union, due to, the lead up to the Cold War, of course, and the fear of the Soviet Union in terms of them not actually remaining an ally. People know the history, I'd imagine, but it's just a really great moment in history to make a movie about, right? So it's a compelling story. On top of that, what this movie is as a biopic, with Oppenheimer, you have Nolan doing what he does as a filmmaker, right? I think Nolan, on one hand, is probably our greatest presenter of science in big filmmaking. Of course, this is, think of Interstellar particularly, but Nolan's interest in presenting science, whether it's real life or more fantastical, of course, in movie like Inception or Tenet, whatever it is. Nolan is really good at communicating ideas like that. The quantum physics and taking Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and moving all that forward. The average person, myself included, does not really understand the minutia of a lot of what the scientists in Oppenheimer are discussing. But Nolan is such a strong filmmaker that he can communicate really heady and dense stuff quite well. So you have that. Also, I think because Nolan is such a visual filmmaker, right? Of course, this movie looks amazing. When we go to Los Alamos, where the Manhattan Project is secretly conducting all of its testing and development, this town built in the Badlands, basically, right? In the West United States, they're actually there, right? So it just looks absolutely fantastic. We can do that. We know Nolan's eye for the camera. He's working once again with Hoyte van Hoytema as his cinematographer, and Van Hoytema, has worked with Nolan the past few movies. Did Nope with Jordan Peele last year. He's rapidly rising up there in terms of the active cinematographers, in terms of what you communicate on the screen. And I think what's so fun about Oppenheimer as well, which is written by Christopher Nolan as well, and is directed, is that this is like a walk and talk drama. Tons of characters walking and talking in rooms. of course, we associate that with someone like Aaron Sorkin, someone like even like a Fincher a little bit, right? Depending on who he's working with, such as Sorkin. That is not usually what we think of when it comes to Nolan screenplays. And yet it's honestly like a perfect fit for this kind of story because it's a biopic, right? And if people know biopics as a film format, like they are not rare. We get them all the time because there are so many people in history worth making a movie about. But a lot of times, the biopic format can be very staid and very static and a bit rote in terms of how it goes about its storytelling, and it doesn't really rise above kind of being a loose amalgamation of what Wikipedia could tell you about said subject, right? But Nolan, who in making Oppenheimer was adapting American Prometheus, the J. Robert Oppenheimer biography, a very long book from Kai Bird and Martin Sherwin, written in or published in 2005, which has been a bestseller for months now in the lead up to this film. Nolan, I think, really stands out in terms of making a biopic because he is able to present visually in ways that most filmmakers have no dream of ever achieving, right? So I think what's so cool about this movie, and really a great way of communicating the point of view the movie has on its singular subject, is when things come up, we are presented with Oppenheimer's thoughts on what's going on, or his thoughts about the future, his feelings about what's going on. And we see that as like a physical manifestation on the screen, on the film. And, sometimes when, like in the very beginning, when Oppenheimer's kind of processing various physics theory and whatnot and trying to just put things together in his own mind as the genius man that he was, you literally are interspersed as the viewer. We're seeing like atoms colliding. We're seeing like space-time and stuff. And it's like a really effective way of communicating Oppenheimer's thoughts and feelings on things. Later in the film, and of course, spoilers for the film, it's based on history, but spoilers for the film, like later, when Oppenheimer's thinking about the irreparable tragedy that befalls the actual use of a nuclear weapon, you see Oppenheimer thinking about, the tarred, ashes of Japanese bodies, right? And he's like seeing that in his mind, but it's presented to us in scene, in picture with Oppenheimer when he's reflecting back on an affair he had, cheating on his wife. We actually see that affair in actual picture, with like on top of the chair in the room that Oppenheimer and his wife are actually in the moment. Like the way it processes memory and feeling and thought like that, I thought was like really brilliant. And also because the movie is so expertly edited, it's the cutting is so quick, so precise that it's able to show you Oppenheimer, show you these manifestations of his feelings and his emotions, and then cut back to reality again. It's, I think, a really riveting way to communicate emotion and communicate complicated emotion too. I think that's what's really great about Oppenheimer as well, is that Oppenheimer's feelings and thoughts about what he's doing, what he's achieving, his leadership in terms of this group of brilliant men and women and where they're going, that is dense, and it is hard to parse, and Oppenheimer is hard to read. I think the movie does a great job at that. This is a Christopher Nolan movie, so obviously the timeline is not strictly linear, but I think it is really great to follow and is kind of structured very well. There's really just a few different distinctions. It's really like the lead up of Oppenheimer, pre-Manhattan Project. He's in Europe, gets basically hired by Matt Damon's character, General Leslie Groves, or it may not be general yet, but in the Army, Leslie Groves, played by Matt Damon, brought in to lead the Manhattan Project. The lead up to that is contrasted with this black and white timeline featuring Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Louis Strauss, a government figure, and he's talking with one of his aides in Congress, played by Alden Ehrenreich, and the way those timelines kind of mesh, it's, I think, very propulsive, very riveting in the beginning, and then by Act 3, a lot of the core timeline in terms of the lead up of the Manhattan Project, leading up to the Trinity test, the first test of a nuclear weapon, or atomic weapon in a test environment, proving that everything they had worked to for years, billions of dollars, proving that it all worked. That first 2 acts leading to that Trinity test point is some of the most propulsive and riveting and thrilling stuff I've ever seen, despite the fact that we all know that the test will work. We know what happens. And I think it just really speaks to the strength of that editing, the strength of that direction, of course the strength of the acting, that you're just on the edge of your seat, and it's like a true, genuine thriller within a more traditional biopic mold. And once we get post-Trinity test, we really dive in with Act 3 into the black and white, present day scenes, which is based around the Alden Ehrenreich, Robert Downey Jr. stuff going on in Congress, as well as the 1954 security clearance hearings that Oppenheimer goes through post World War II, post all the immense success. We're kind of in this boardroom where Oppenheimer's getting basically railroaded and embarrassed in this private hearing with the already decided goal of revoking his security clearance in a type of kangaroo court type situation. And I think the movie still really grabs you in that third act, and it really concludes with an immense ending. And this ending is actually a continuation of the first piece of a scene you see in the very beginning of the movie, which is when Robert Downey Jr.'s character, Louis Strauss, at Princeton, kind of offers Oppenheimer this post and is trying to basically bring Oppenheimer into the U.S. government's fold in terms of running, like, how they think about atomic energy and stuff. Again, a lot of history to parse, but at that time, Oppenheimer walks down to speak to none other than Albert Einstein. I think it's really cool to see Albert Einstein in a movie like this, just because that's just one of the legendary people in the history of humanity, and to see him manifested on screen, to me, I was like, it's kind of chilling. I thought it was really cool. I forget who plays him. Tom Conti plays him. Thought he did a really good job. And they have a brief moment. We don't know what Oppenheimer and Einstein say to each other. We link back in with Oppenheimer and Strauss. Oppenheimer says he'll think about it, and that's it. Very end of the movie, we go back to that scene. We find out Oppenheimer and Einstein said to each other, and I thought it was just a really haunting, bone-chilling type monologue about how what happened to Einstein in the scientific community, Einstein's telling Oppenheimer it's going to happen to you right about now. It basically predicts what happens to Oppenheimer in terms of you will be cast out and left behind, and then once you get old, they'll bring you around, hand you some awards, pat you on the back, tell you did a good job when you're old and not relevant. And just remember, they're not doing that for you, they're doing that for themselves. And you actually you hear those Einstein comments over a future scene where Oppenheimer gets an award from, I believe, the Lyndon Johnson administration. I believe it was given out by Kennedy, but Kennedy was killed before the award happened. And we see other people that we knew from the movie and from the Manhattan Project there. And I think it's a really effective ending. And then from there, it just seems to kind of really get into Oppenheimer being consumed by this guilt over what he had done in terms of allowing humanity the ability to annihilate itself, becoming the merchant of death, the destroyer of worlds, whatever the quote was. And, we see these flashes to modern day nuclear warheads and stuff. And I think it really makes you think. And, I think the Oppenheimer character is so fascinating and so rich for a movie like this is because he was not someone who ever publicly expressed that complete remorse for what he had done, even if in terms of his public or his professional life post-war, in terms of coming out in opposition to the H-bomb program, the advancement of atomic bombs post-World War II to the bomb, the more modern bombs we have now. That was the extent of it. And he's a really complicated figure. and that ending definitely leaves you sitting with a lot of um, guilt and bad feeling, but it's completely earned, completely justified in the movie. I just think the way they have Einstein being the one to kind of grab that and bring it all home for the viewer and putting you in that headspace for Oppenheimer, like, I think it's just really moving. So I liked, as I said, I liked Act 3, where it kind of goes post World War II. But those first two acts, when we're in the lead up to World War II is kicking, and leading up to the Trinity test and the dropping of the bombs, that is just propulsive and riveting and edge of your seat stuff. And I think a big part of this movie, really fun part of this movie, is just how many like big name actors are in it. Playing countless famous and significant people in history from this time. So obviously people know Cillian Murphy as J. Robert Oppenheimer. Cillian Murphy, been in many Nolan movies before, but he's never been the star of a Nolan movie till now. And obviously most famous for Peaky Blinders, the lead role there. This is kind of the big star turn for Murphy on the big screen. And he completely crushes it. We think of Cillian Murphy, very distinct face, those big blue eyes. What he communicates with his face, he's able to really embody the enigma of J. Robert Oppenheimer in an amazing way. And he carries the film. He's really great. I think the Oscar nomination is a lock at this point. From there, we have Matt Damon as Leslie Groves. Matt Damon, kind of perfect as this kind of leader soldier character. Matt Damon's always good. Robert Downey Jr. as Lewis Strauss really stands out. Robert Downey Jr., he basically took some time away post Avengers Endgame, post cashing that $50 million check for Marvel. He was chilling, and he come back, I think, in a big role. Best Supporting Actor nom, I think, is in the mix here for Downey. I really like the multitudes to Lewis Strauss, the almost two-faced nature we learn about towards the end of the movie. I think it's a really great piece of casting, really great performance from Downey. Two key female characters in the movie that I cannot overlook. Emily Blunt plays Kitty Oppenheimer, Robert Oppenheimer's wife. Florence Pugh plays Jean Tatlock, this acquaintance, friend of Oppie that he had an affair with, a complicated relationship with. And this, unfortunately, presents a common trope with Nolan movies in the sense that he is not good at handling female characters. Often female characters in his movies do not have a lot to do, are not very well fleshed out. I would say Emily Blunt, as his wife, has very little to do to the very end when, thankfully, Emily Blunt, great actor, movie star actor, she finally is given something to do at the very end where she actually gives testimony in the kangaroo court hearings and kind of goes head to head with Jason Clarke's like prosecutor type character in that scene, and Blunt really kills it there. That's like her only like real big moment. Otherwise she's just kind of the wife to the complicated womanizing man, and it's a bit beneath someone like Emily Blunt. I think that's obvious. Florence Pugh as Jean Tatlock, this is also a character that I think is just not given quite enough time for the movie, despite it clearly is a significant character in the history. Both Tatlock was a source of infidelity from Oppenheimer, but also a key source of a lot of suspicion around Oppenheimer because Tatlock was a active member of the Communist Party in the United States. And obviously at this time, the Second Red Scare is already in full swing in the lead up to McCarthyism. And the way communism is portrayed in a fearful and, very anti-right-wing tone with government at this time, I think is also a key part of the tension, of course, coming from real history, but key part of the tension in this movie. And Jean, though, she's portrayed as someone who maybe has some mental health issues, a bit unstable in some way, but there's just not enough time. Like they meet, they're together. Apparently they have this very complicated connection. And then she either kills herself / gets killed. We don't really know. It's portrayed ambiguously by design. I just don't think there was quite enough there that when Oppenheimer expresses some real grief over finding out that she died and having Kitty embrace him, like, it's just not, it needed more time. And for a 3-hour movie, you probably could have found that time. So unfortunately, Nolan's still kind of doing what he does with having weak female characters. Pugh and Blunt are great, but they're only given so much to do. Josh Hartnett, obviously he's kind of been on the comeback as a character actor the last few years. Great performance in Black Mirror earlier this year. He's really integral as Ernest Lawrence, who, is someone who made one of like the first particle accelerators. Key part of the story, especially at the beginning. Thought Hartnett was great. Casey Affleck shows up pretty late in the movie as Boris Patch, this government military figure who is kind of investigating and suspicious of Oppenheimer. You have Kenneth Branagh as Niels Bohr, this Danish physicist who was a bit of an early mentor to Oppenheimer in terms of academic theorizing and whatnot. Small role for him, but he's good. Rami Malek shows up later doing the neurotic Rami Malek stuff, but he has one big moment at the end. Clark as the prosecutor, Roger Robb. Jason Clarke is perfect for this kind of role. This bombastic, gregarious, aggressive type character does a great job. I mentioned Tom Conti as Einstein. Benny Safdie as Edward Teller, the Hungarian American physicist who is integral to the Manhattan Project, and then later becomes integral in the development of the H-bomb program post-war. The war. Really great character, especially because Teller is like the one person in the scientific community who basically stabs Oppenheimer in the back during those hearings. The one who doesn't completely endorse and stand behind Oppenheimer's judgment and loyalty to the U.S. and whatnot. Safdie, who obviously we know as one half of the Safdie brothers, but has been acting a lot the past 5 years, putting on an accent for this movie. I think he bulked up a little bit to fill out for the role. I thought he did a really good job. I think this is a key part, one of the key supporting characters, and he did a really nice job. Dylan Arnold as Oppenheimer's brother. David Dastmalchian as Borden, someone who is used by Strauss to ruin Oppenheimer's reputation. Dane DeHaan as this lackey of Strauss. Alden Ehrenreich, as I said, as an aide to Strauss. All small roles, but they're all nice. You have Matthew Modine in a small role. Josh Peck in a blink and you miss a type role. I think he has one line. Jack Quaid, another small role. Alex Wolff, small role. David Krumholtz as Isidore Isaac Rabi, who was an American physicist, Nobel Prize winner. He has I think 2 or 3 key scenes, but man, Krumholtz, he's one of those actors that just gets completely lost in whatever role he's playing. Loved him in this. Thought he was really great. You get Matthias Schweighöfer as Werner Heisenberg, the German physicist who ends up leading the Nazis' efforts during the war to develop a bomb. Brief scene, but I really liked him in it. Yeah, loaded cast. And then I didn't even know he was in the movie, but Gary Oldman shows up as Truman at the end for one real scene. And we know Oldman can get lost in a historical figure, of course. Now he's played both Truman and Churchill, pretty funny. But I thought the cast, top to bottom, was great. And it's just fun watching first time, waiting for you see, oh wow, we're 2 hours into the movie and we just got Casey Affleck showing up. It's just kind of a big flex, and it shows you people are willing to work with someone like a Nolan, a filmmaker who's so famous they'll take any role he offers. Really cool. Yeah, I mean, I should note the Ludwig Göransson's score. Man, I mean, the score combined with the fast editing, the portrayal of emotion on screen, all of that really sings. Man, we know Göransson's been crushing the music game with movies lately. I think he did an amazing job with this. I saw the movie in 70 millimeter. I didn't see IMAX 70 millimeter. There's only 30 of those screens in the country. I saw one of the 150 or so 70 millimeter showings. And obviously it's really cool to see something on film, seeing really on film, just because it's pretty uncommon. That was a fun experience. As I said, I'll be getting to the Barbenheimer stuff in a separate segment. Check the link below. But yeah, man, I just got really grabbed by the complication of Oppenheimer as a character, the presentation of the vast moral quandary and ethical minefield that was everything going on at this time. It's just such a significant aspect of American history, of world history, and just kind of being like in the moment, in the time as we're in the midst of the Manhattan Project for the years it's going on, having everything going on with the fear of communism, the fear of Soviet spies amidst the project, like, and then of course all the political intrigue that you get at the end with Oppenheimer being railroaded and Strauss being exposed for what he had done. I mean, I just found all that so moving, and I mean, I think it's one of the most successfully emotional Nolan films. Again, that's something that's not often cited as a strength of Christopher Nolan, but I mean, I thought it was just really special. And obviously, if you're a fan of history, you'll love to just see it portrayed. But I think it really kind of rises well above the any kind of historical film or biopic film because it has that visual excellence that we expect from Nolan and his crew in terms of editing and camera and using aspect ratios and changing color. And then the script is one of, I think, the most impressive Nolan scripts. Again, we don't think of him as a writer first, but this is one of the best jobs he's ever done. And yeah, I'd have this as my best movie of the year. Right now, it's this and Past Lives. Right now, we'll see what happens, see how I feel at the end of the year. But yeah, I think this is one of the best movies Nolan's ever made. And obviously, that says a lot. He's a filmmaker with a lot of fans, also a lot of detractors, just because there's a polarizing aspect to some of the things that have been common in his films, particularly the portrayal of women, portrayal of timelines, and valuing visual over story coherence, depending on the film. I don't believe all those things. Those are just common thoughts people have. But this, I mean, I think this is a movie that answers a lot of the detractors' thoughts in terms of what it does well. And it's just so amazing, again, that a movie like this, a 3-hour historical drama, rated R, this is a movie that grossed $80 million at the domestic box office. That's amazing. So let me know, how did you feel about Oppenheimer? How would you compare it to other Nolan movies? What was your favorite thing about it? Who was your favorite actor in it? There's certainly so many to pick from. And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.